Hello everyone. This time I'm doing something I would not have expected to do, because this video is a response to one of Barron's videos. And I like Barron. He's one of my favorites. As a matter of fact, has been for a long time. His worldview and my worldview have a lot in common. Barron's recent video was about the now infamous Barron Trump tweet. One of the writers for Saturday Night Live tweeted something that a lot of people found terribly offensive. And Barron seems to think that people are overreacting to it.
So you've probably heard that one of the writers for Saturday Night Live has been given the arse from her job after she tweeted a joke about Donald Trump's 10-year-old son Barron. Here's what the New York Post wrote about it. SNL suspends writer for mocking Barron Trump. Saturday Night Live suspended a writer who made fun of Donald Trump's youngest son on Twitter. Katie Ritchie's now benched indefinitely from her gig, writing for Weekend Update, sources close to the show said Monday. Rich took to Twitter on Monday to say sorry. I sincerely apologise for the insensitive tweet. I deeply regret my actions and offensive words. It was inexcusable and I am so sorry. On Friday, the day Trump was sworn in as America's 45th president, Rich tweeted a tasteless joke about 10-year-old Barron Trump. Barron will be this country's first homeschool shooter. That was fucking offensive and went too fucking far. It's the president's son, for fuck's sake. No, I'm just fucking with you. I actually thought that joke was quite funny.
Well, I didn't find that funny. But I didn't take it the same way Barron did. I'll get to that, though. Right off, I'm going to point out that the last thing Barron said there was, it's the president's son, for fuck's sake. It doesn't matter that it's the president's son. That's not what's got people up in arms. It could have been a celebrity's kid, or the president's kid, or a senator's kid, or just some kid that no one has ever heard of who happened to be on the news. Anything at all. The fact that it was a kid. A 10-year-old kid had something really nasty said about them in the public eye. You can't do that and not face some kind of consequence. People are going to react. Some people will be offended. Now that's to be expected even if the joke is not offensive. Barron says that, and it happens to be true. But this time I think the joke was considerably more offensive than Barron realizes.
I mean, this woman is a comedy writer, so she wrote some comedy that some people thought went too far. There's always going to be someone who gets offended no matter what the joke. And if there isn't, it's usually a pretty crap joke. In any case, I don't think Barron was the butt of this joke. Barron was obviously one of the main characters, but the thing that made it funny was the suggestion that Donald Trump is such a cunt that his own son would want to shoot him. I hate to be one of those cunts that explains a joke, but there's been so many people menstruating over the idea that Barron Trump was targeted by this joke.
Well, I also hate to be one of those cunts who has to explain a joke. But the joke that I heard is not the same joke that Barron heard. I took it completely differently. What I thought it was insinuating was that the Trumps are just batshit crazy and dangerous, so much so that even the 10-year-old kid in the White House could turn violent. Not a particularly funny joke and absolutely offensive. And maybe I'm just a jerk, but if so, there are a lot of us out there like that, because a lot of people read the joke the same way that I did. It sounded that offensive. They didn't hear a joke about Donald Trump. They heard a nasty joke about a 10-year-old kid. And that does cross a line. You do not have to be overly sensitive to be upset about it. And I know that Barron understands this because there was a time when Barron came to the aid of a feminist. Well, that's strange. Barron himself is an anti-feminist. However, the feminist in question happened to be a young girl. She was only 14, if I remember right. And some numbnuts YouTuber out there decided to respond to her video, and he just lashed out, said a bunch of nasty, insulting things. And that upset Barron to the point that he made a response video to defend the girl. Or at the very least, to attack the man who had insulted her, because he did it in such a crude fashion. Barron was largely applauded for that, and rightly so. There are limits to decency. You can't just say whatever you want and say, well, it was just a joke, get over it, you shouldn't be that offended. Sometimes the offense is real. Now, if Barron is right, and the joke was really about Donald Trump, then people have misunderstood. But if I'm right, then all of that offense is justified.
Maybe Saturday Night Live gave this writer the arse because they were nervous about Trump's possible retaliation.
Or maybe they're worried about the public's retaliation, because Saturday Night Live does rely on the public. They sell to a large audience. If they offend people too much, then people stop watching. It is in their interest to protect the show. They don't have to be afraid of President Trump at all to react. And it's not the first time this has happened. Not even to Saturday Night Live. I don't know if everyone remembers it, but a long time ago when Bill Clinton was president, there was a Wayne's World skit in which Wayne and Garth made fun of Chelsea Clinton's looks. And Chelsea was just a child at the time. People got upset. There was a public apology. It was an issue. It was a scandal not unlike this one. Even though I was not one of Bill Clinton's supporters, in fact, I think he was a lousy president, I still was on the side of Chelsea Clinton, not Saturday Night Live. I thought the joke did take things too far. You watch what you say about a kid, even a kid in the public eye. And what was said about Barron Trump was much nastier than that. They suggested he was violent, unstable, dangerous. Much cruder, much nastier joke. Again, she might not have meant it that way, but that was the way people took it. Now, maybe it really was just an honest mistake on her part. But when I make an honest mistake that bad, I tend to apologize for it, and there are typically repercussions beyond just an apology. Now, you could say that you don't think she should have been suspended, and I want to make that clear. She was suspended, not fired. If Barron's main argument had been that Saturday Night Live had overreacted and she shouldn't have been suspended, but should instead have just had to apologize publicly, then I wouldn't have felt the need to make my video. He wouldn't have even had to say anything about a public apology. If he had just said that the consequences that she faces are too strong, then I would have accepted his point of view on that. But the theme of Barron's video is that people are too easily offended. And that's not the case in this situation. So I'm sorry, Barron, but what you said as a joke happens to be true.
That was fucking offensive and went too fucking far. It's the president's son, for fuck's sake.
That was fucking offensive. It did go too fucking far, regardless of whether it's the president's son or not.